Tell me about your vision.
Sure. So I am on a mission to rid the world of lazy leadership.
Mm.
As a leadership advisor, I work with leaders and teams and organizations to build trusting environments through communicating with clarity and addressing conflict in a constructive manner.
Wow, that's awesome. Tell me more.
Sure. So I tend to work with people within the professional services space and then their clients who they refer me to. And what I'm hearing a lot of these days is that we're all going so fast that we have more meetings on our calendars than ever before, and that we're not, as human beings, we don't have the time, or we're not making it a priority to slow down and take a moment to just think about what is needed in this moment, in this conversation, in this meeting, in this interaction. So what I'm hearing and seeing people do is they're sweeping a lot of things under the rug because they just don't have time to address these things. So what they think is like, I'm just going to do this or quickly respond to this email. They end up taking more time later on because of the residual effects. Like, there's a misunderstanding, or they misread something, or they misinterpret something in an email, for instance, and that escalates conflict or misunderstanding in some way. And so trust erodes, and they oftentimes leaders don't realize that that trust is eroding when it is, until it gets to the point that something blows up or someone leaves or a client fires them. And so really helping people be far more deliberate in their approach to leading, both internally and externally with clients or customers, and really helping them gain that awareness of what they're doing that's not serving themselves or others, and then giving them the tools to be able to have a difficult conversation or to address conflict, so that it's not doesn't continue to escalate out of control.
For sure. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Tell me more. How did this come about? Like, how did you get on the path of this leadership? I know leadership is very, very, very important in any organization, and if an organization is not really focusing on that, the growth is, I think, comes to a halt, or
Mhm.
the growth stops eventually.
Yes.
So, tell me more. How did you end up here
Yeah.
in this realm?
Well, I started my career working at Harvard University, and one of the first, well, second role, third role that I had there was working at Harvard Business School on an initiative examining women in the workforce. And this was, well, it was 19 years ago. And I know that because I was pregnant with my daughter. So that's how I always know how long it was since I was there, when I started there. And what we noticed at the time was that um, the infrastructures essentially were not in place to retain and advance women into leadership positions. When my daughter was born, that just gave me that fire that I wanted her career opportunities, down the road, to be the same as her brother, that whatever opportunities that he had, that she could have the same opportunities. Uh, when she was about 5, I started my own practice of this leadership advising, working with leaders and individuals and teams and organizations to really help them, as I said, be deliberate. Because, like you said, without that vision, without knowing where we're going, where we're heading, what we're trying to achieve, we have so many people just rowing in different directions. And by helping people get on the same page, addressing the issues before they, start to really grow and become like an avalanche, and just take over everything, really help people think and communicate what that vision is, what they want for the organization, and not some fluffy language that's but put on a plaque and put on a wall somewhere, but really something that people can live by, make decisions through, and know who they are and how they are representing their organization, their team, to be the most effective leader, the most effective at what they do, so that they are admired, that they are respected because of that.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. Would you say that that is also your why of what you do?
Yeah, it really, going back to my daughter, that is my why. I want the workforce, the workplace to be different than it was 19 years ago when she was born. And I certainly have seen shifts. Things have changed in the last 5 years of the way that people interact with one another, and more seeing a lack of interaction, of live interaction, and people struggle with that. And there's so much that we don't see or pick up on when we are texting someone or emailing someone compared to a live conversation, ideally in person, but that isn't the case all the time. But being able to see where people are and seeing their interactions, their response, their body language, the nonverbal communication that happens, which depending on the research I've looked at, it's anywhere from 65 to 90% of our communication is nonverbal. So certainly in a text and an email and an instant message, like you can't tell the whole picture of what's going on.
Yeah.
So it really forces us to communicate and to listen far more intently than we've ever had to.
So what are going a little deeper in this. So what are some of the changes or some of the impact that you have seen when someone implements your way of strategy behind leadership?
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that. I just was on with a client this morning and I did some work with them around their communications as a leadership team. And we used an assessment to help them understand both themselves and each other, how they naturally think and behave. And the story that came up this morning was that the two managing partners plus the chief talent person were discussing hiring a vendor, a consultant to help them with something. And they interviewed two people. One person was, here's my framework, here's my approach, this is where you are, this is where I'm going to get you to, and this is how we're going to do it. So very logical systems, processes in place. The other person was a little bit more fly by the seat of his pants of like, we're going to unearth and see what comes up, and then we'll figure it out as we go. And the two leaders, the one who responded well to that, the gentleman who said, let's fly by the seat of the pants, that's how he communicates. That's his approach to problem solving. But with the chief development person, they came at it from different viewpoints. So she really liked the processes, the systems, the approach, the clarity that she had with one consultant. But they were able to say, instead of saying, well, we're just going to agree to disagree and I'm the managing partner, so we're going to do as I say, what they were then able to have this conversation of, oh, I understand where you're coming from. You like this structured approach, and that feels confining to me. And then she was able to say, yeah, I do like the process. I like the system. I like to know where we're going. I like having that clarity. And the willy nilly is the word she used, doesn't work for me. But there wasn't a disagreement. It was simply understanding, oh, this is how you prefer to communicate. So, of course, you're going to appreciate that approach versus this one. And so they're able then to talk about it, not kind of finger pointing, but instead being able to say, oh, okay, this is where you're coming from. This is where I'm coming from. But what does the firm need? And where are we trying to get to? And approach it from that perspective, because they understood that they were seeing and valuing things differently in that decision of who to choose as a vendor.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing that. That was very, very helpful. I have one more question for you before we end today's segment, Joey. Will be your entrepreneur journey of with
Mhm.
this. How did you get started on that? If you want to expand, like how was it in these early days when you were like getting started off your feet and figuring out what you need to do?
Yeah. Well, so when I started my practice, it was something I'd thought about for a bit. I was working at the time for a startup in the career space, and really have a great relationship with the two founders and watched them grow and create. They started with writing a book, saw a need for some consulting, and they kept growing that way. I was their first employee. And so I saw and learned from them in terms of what worked, what made me feel comfort, what made me feel uneasy. And what I figured out was, I really love having an impact on people. and how can I do that in the most effective way? So when I started my practice, my goal was to coach some of the leaders who that I'd been exposed to over the course of my career. But I maintained that relationship and kept doing project work for them, because that, for me, that felt comfortable to know I had a little bit of income coming in
Yeah.
while I was starting my practice. And I approached it certainly from a more conservative, less risk-taking place. I bought a computer. That was my down payment, and I took some courses. But I wasn't, I didn't have an outlay of money. So if for me that worked, because if it didn't work, if the practice didn't grow, I could walk away and there wasn't much that I needed to get rid of, or, that I owed on. And so I had the one of the best pieces of advice that someone gave me in the very beginning was, you're going to have these very large dips and rises of your practice.
Hmm.
And as you continue to grow and build your name and get referrals, that won't be such deep, highs and lows. And so now when I have a little bit of a dip, I take advantage of it. That's the time that I do a lot of business development. I do a lot of speaking. I will do a lot of planning and development, because I know that it's going to come back up, but it's not these big highs and lows. Um, I, it was within the first year of my practice, all my clients at the time would be ending their engagements at the end of the month. And I had no one starting the following month. So I had no income coming in.
Mm.
And it was a great motivator. It set that urgency, like, I got to get out there. And I still do this, but I do a lot of speaking, whether it's on podcasts like this or on big stages at conferences. Uh, I want as many people as out there to know and to hear how I approach things, how I add value to people. And so that's what I did when I knew, like, I saw all my clients are coming to an end. I called my alma mater and said, "Hey, I'll do a free webinar for you." And I got 3 clients out of it, which I wasn't expecting to, but it was a great thing. And then I realized, oh, I can keep offering to do a webinar. Doesn't take much on me. I'm not traveling, sitting here. I have the equipment. I can do this. So speaking has always been something that has worked really well for me, uh, from a business development and growth standpoint.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a Vision Pro yourself.